low-educated individuals, please leave now. I could no longer hold back after hearing those words. I chose to enter the workforce right after high school, but Jason, my manager, who graduated from Oxford University, seems to hold that against me. Even at a welcome party, he relentlessly mocked me. Finally, he said, "People with low education, please leave my site." When I decided to leave as he wished, others began saying, "Yeah, I should go too, me as well," and one by one, everyone started preparing to leave, and indeed, everyone left the place. Jason, left behind, probably never imagined he would end up apologizing to me. My name is Ethan. I work as a programmer at an IT company. I turned my longtime hobby into my career, and I love my work. Programming is a deeply fascinating and rewarding field. When I'm engrossed in my work, I forget about eating and sleeping. That's how passionate I am about this job. Ever since I was young, I've been interested in electronics, disassembling things like alarm clocks and vacuum cleaners, and of course, I always reassembled them. But when I dismantled my father's cell phone, I really got into trouble. Though I fixed it, I was still barred from having snacks as punishment. I remember how challenging that was for me as a second grader. It was really tough. When I was in third grade, my teacher, Ms. Anderson, said, "Soon, you'll have a class on programming, so we'll give you a brief introduction to what programming is." That lesson completely captivated me, and I plunged deep into the world of programming. It felt like falling into a programming rabbit hole. Even though we only covered the basics in class, I went home and eagerly shared with my parents. Today, I learned about programming from my teacher. My father, also a programmer, said, "If you enjoy it that much, I can teach you more about programming." I hugged him and eagerly asked, "Really? Please do." I received my own computer and learned more about programming from my father, diving even deeper into this world. While my friends were obsessed with video games, I discovered I could create my own games for programming, and that's precisely what I started doing. The games I created with my father's help were a hit among my friends, who exclaimed, "Ethan, you made this incredible. It's so much fun." I felt an immense sense of accomplishment when my programs worked as intended. Of course, my dream in the elementary school yearbook was to become a programmer. Throughout middle school, I remained obsessed with programming, and when it was time to choose a career path in 9th grade, I declared, I aspire to work as a programmer immediately after middle school. Naturally, my teacher, Miss Thompson, immediately objected, advising, "No, at least finish high school first." My parents also counseled, "We understand your passion for programming, Ethan, but at least complete high school." But I remained determined, my eyes alight with ambition, as I asserted, "I want to start working as a programmer as soon as possible." After about 20 persuasive conversations with Miss Thompson and my parents, they finally said, "Even if you're not interested in certain subjects, they might be useful in the future. You're young, so you should broaden your knowledge beyond just programming." I still want to, I thought, considering my options. But then they proposed, "If you attend a high school that allows part-time jobs, we'll let you work as a programmer at the company where I work." I instantly agreed, exclaiming, "Really? Then I'll go to high school." So, I ended up attending high school instead of working right after middle school. Had I refused, Miss Thompson was prepared to involve the principal and vice principal. So, I enrolled in a high school that allowed part-time work and immediately started my job. Of course, my workplace was my father's company. After being nurtured there for 3 years, I successfully secured a position at the same company. Upon graduating from high school, I transitioned from a part-time employee to a full-time employee, fulfilling my dream of working as a programmer. As a full-time employee, everyone at the company where I had interned admired me. I'm currently working on a major company's system construction, which has required me to be on a long-term assignment in the countryside, but I'm planning to return to the headquarters soon. And now, after the long-term assignment, I'm back at the headquarters. Hey, Ethan, welcome back. I've returned. It's been quite some time. You seem to have excelled over there. I've heard positive things. I reunited with my colleagues after a considerable time and distributed souvenirs. Indeed, it had been a long time since I last saw everyone. As I reminisced about the familiar atmosphere of the office after a long time, a certain individual caught my eye. He was an older gentleman, sharply dressed in a suit. I wondered, have I met him before? Just then, Tyler, a senior colleague, informed me, Ethan, you probably haven't met Jason yet. He joined a company during your assignment. He's now the manager of this department and was personally headhunted by President Smith from Oxford University. No wonder he looked unfamiliar. Well, an Oxford graduate must be quite accomplished. I approached Jason to introduce myself. Jason, I'm Ethan. I was on a long-term assignment, so please excuse my delayed introduction. You're Ethan. I've heard quite a bit about you. I'm looking forward to working together. He responded with a smile, and we shook hands. He seemed pleasant, but then he unexpectedly inquired, Ethan, you appear quite young. From which university did you graduate? Surprised by the abrupt question about my education, I candidly responded, I joined this company straight out of high school. Jason's eyes widened. What? The company hires directly from high school? He exclaimed. I was puzzled, wondering if my high school graduation was really that astonishing. Perhaps for Jason, an Oxford alumnus, it was. Assuming it was a norm among graduates, I merely smiled and remarked, well, yes, I wanted to start working early. Jason then commented, I see. You must have had to start working early due to financial constraints. What a huge misconception. It wasn't for that reason, but clarifying such a significant misunderstanding seemed daunting, so I resigned to simply saying, anyway, I'm looking forward to collaborating with you, and returned to my desk. However, from that point on, Jason perceived me as merely a high school graduate. He assigned me menial tasks like photocopying documents, sorting trash, and managing mail, all tasks anyone could perform. He didn't involve me in any programming work. I advocated for the opportunity to engage in programming, as it was my expertise, but he dismissed it, laughing, no, you're just a high school graduate, right? I'm assigning tasks that fit your level. I was excluded from the projects I had been handling. According to Jason, it's unprofessional to have a high school graduate leading projects. I felt regret for the clients and colleagues to whom I couldn't properly transition the work. But Jason, as expected of a manager who was headhunted, was an exceptional programmer and operated at an incredibly fast pace. I thought, if only he were less competent, I might have had a chance to prove myself, but I kept these thoughts private. So, I found myself unable to challenge Jason and silently followed his commands. Some seniors tried to advocate for me to Jason, but I didn't want them to face repercussions on my behalf, so I requested they refrain. In the midst of this, Brandon, known for lifting spirits in the office, suggested, since Ethan has returned to the headquarters and we haven't yet celebrated Jason's arrival, let's have a welcome party. Consequently, a party was scheduled for the weekend. Apparently, my attendance was expected. Is that fine, Jason? If it's a welcome party for me, I'd be delighted to attend, he replied cheerfully. Jason seemed to appreciate social gatherings. Ethan, you're the guest of honor, so make sure to be there. Don't worry, I'll ensure your presence, Tyler reassured with a smile, and the day of the party arrived. This party has even been mentioned to President Smith, so let's enjoy ourselves, Dylan, the organizer, encouraged as I wrapped up my work. Then, just before the end of the day, an internal call came through to our department. It was from White Work, the company I had been responsible for before being reassigned by Jason. Switching to the call, is that you, Ethan? The employee from White Work inquired. Our computer screens have frozen, and pressing the enter button only spawns continuous pop-up windows. It seems like a bug. Your usual contact is Brandon, right? But he's currently preoccupied. Looking over, I saw Brandon on the phone. Many were out of the office today, and Jason had gone out, planning to head directly to the party venue. Everyone else is busy with other issues. If this isn't fixed, we can't progress with our work. At this hour, we'll have no choice but to work overtime. Overtime is the worst. We want to leave on time, I heard through the phone. I vaguely remembered Whiteworks being famously a white company, where everyone wanted to avoid overtime at all costs. Can someone come and fix this? If it's not fixed, we can leave. Maybe Ethan can figure it out quickly. Well, I'd have to see it first to understand. Whiteworks wasn't far from here, and since I used to handle them, I thought of going. Then I heard Brandon saying, "Yes, that's the plan. Thank you very much." He was about to end his call. It looked like the call would soon be over. "I'm sorry, could you wait a moment, please?" I put the call on hold and approached Brandon. Then, Brandon immediately hung up the phone, and I promptly explained the situation to him, saying, "Brandon, about earlier. Man, seriously, I need to make 2 more calls right now. Ethan, could I leave the handling to you?" "Yes, of course." Now that I had Brandon's permission, I promptly lifted the hold and said, "I apologize for the wait. Brandon is unable to handle this at the moment, so I'll be right there," and headed to Whiteworks. I was excited to be working as a programmer again after a while, even though I might get scolded. Although I couldn't program at work, doing it at home was different. It felt more like a job, and I was more motivated. It's not that I don't get motivated by miscellaneous tasks assigned by Jason, but still. The welcome party is at 7 p.m. today, so there's still some time. I'll definitely finish before then. Eventually, I successfully resolved the bug, and Whiteworks didn't have to work overtime, earning me a big round of applause from everyone. Only Ethan can do it. Let's call him Ethan the Great. Almost no overtime. We can go home. How thankful. The exaggerated joy made me leave Whiteworks. Looking at my watch, it's almost 7 p.m. It's about time for the welcome party to start. The venue was a bar a bit away from the office, so I messaged the organizer saying, "I'll be a little late, but I'm on my way," and caught a taxi to the bar. As I got out of the taxi in front of the bar, I heard someone call Ethan from behind. Turning around, there was my father. "Dad?" "What, you just arrived too? You're the guest of honor today." Apparently, my father, the president of our company, was also invited to the welcome party today. He loves social drinking, so he would go wherever he's invited. That's probably why he was invited today. I was dealing with some issues, so I got late." "Well done. How have things been recently? Are you getting along with Jason? He's a great man. You must be learning a lot from him." Well, haha. Wondering what would happen if I told him that I hadn't been given proper work to being a high school graduate. My father and I entered the bar. "Hey Ethan, good job. You're late. You were the only one we were waiting for." "Oh, President Smith too. Glad you could make it." "Of course, I come immediately when it's about drinking." My father laughed, and we were immediately greeted by the senior members of the department as we entered. We arrived at the bar around 7:15 p.m., and Jason was already there. Since I was late for the start of the party, I went to Jason to apologize and greet him. It was now just 7:20 p.m., only about 20 minutes since the party started. However, Jason's face was already red, clearly drunk at first glance. "Jason, thank you for your hard work." The high school graduate finally arrived. "Making me wait, you've got guts," he said with glaring eyes. This was, whether he had been forced to drink too much or he was simply not good with alcohol. Jason was holding a beer stein in his right hand, but could it be that he was this drunk just from beer? "So you, a high school graduate, decided it was okay to make me a college graduate. Wait, and that's why you're late. Jason was completely sloshed as he confronted me, quite a gap from his usual self. Then Jason downed his beer in one go and slammed the stein down on the table with a thud. And he glared at me sharply and said, "The thing is, I didn't join this company to work with someone like you. I joined to meet Mr. Maverick. Mr. Maverick, you might not know him, being a high school graduate, but Mr. Maverick is the programmer I respect the most in this world. The beauty of his programming is unmatched. Seeing that perfectly crafted, flawless program developed by this company changed my life. Anyone would be impressed by him after seeing it. Is that so?" And then Jason started drinking beer again. The gap in his fervor was astonishing. But perhaps it was time for him to stop drinking beer. As I was thinking this, Jason slammed the beer stein down on the table again. Maybe the beer stein itself was reaching its limit. That would be serious if it broke. And yet, even after joining, I still have no idea who Mr. Maverick is. And there are people like you, a high school graduate, working here. People who couldn't even go to university in the US are practically inept. Hey, bring more beer. No, Jason, you've had enough. I tried to stop him, but that seemed to irritate him even more. What's with that attitude for a mere high school graduate? People with low education should get out of my sight. I couldn't take it anymore after those words. All right, I understand. I'll take my leave. I've never been ashamed of being a high school graduate. I don't know what he has against high school graduates, but continuing the conversation with Jason would only result in more insults. I decided I didn't want to be in the same space as him any longer and started preparing to leave, saying, "Excuse me, but I have to leave early." To the organizer Dylan. Then Brandon raised his voice, "Jason, that's enough. Ethan may be a high school graduate, but he is one of our most competent employees. I can't stay with someone who keeps insulting Ethan like that. I'm leaving too, Ethan, let's go." And Brandon started preparing to leave. "Right, I'm leaving too." "Me too," and one by one, our senior colleagues began preparing to leave. No, please stay and drink." I tried to persuade them. But they retorted, "How can we drink after hearing all that about our dear junior?" "Right, Ethan, let's go drink somewhere else." "Hey, that sounds great. I'm in too." "Hey, don't leave me here." I was pulled away by Brandon as our entire department really did leave the bar. The only ones left behind were Jason and my father, the president. The next day after that dreadful drinking party, when I arrived at work, the first thing Jason did was almost prostrate himself and apologize. "I'm very sorry for yesterday. I heard from President Smith. I was drunk and carried away by the alcohol. I apologize." "You heard everything, didn't you?" "Yes. I also heard that you are Mr. James's son and that you are Mr. Maverick. I heard my father told you everything." After we left the bar yesterday, my father, left alone with Jason, told him everything about me. That I am Mr. James's son, that I had been around the company since its inception, known by all employees. From upper elementary school, I was more knowledgeable about programming than anyone in the company, giving advice to employees even as a child. And that the Mr. Maverick, Jason so revered, was actually me. At first he didn't believe it, but he came around when I said there was no benefit to lying here. Yes, the programmer Mr. Maverick that Jason had been talking about was me. The origin of the name comes from my real name, Ethan. The perfect program that Jason had praised so much was something I had created while working part-time during high school. I was perplexed to be praised so much and to be called Mr. Maverick. "So, I heard from other employees that you've been sidelining my son as a mere high school graduate, not giving him proper programming work." Jason's face went pale. Well, my son chose to finish high school, and I even had to persuade him just to attend that. Would you have given him even less work if he was only a middle school graduate? That's not what I mean. If you judge people solely by their educational background, I'll start losing trust in you. With that, my father left Jason behind and walked out of the bar. By the way, since the organizers were too angry and left, my father ended up paying the bill with his card. Maybe I should bill Jason for ruining the party, my father said, clearly not amused. It was really just the alcohol. I was drunk, Jason said weakly. But you always look down on Ethan for being a high school graduate. Brandon raised his voice in defense. Yeah, are you going to flip-flop now that you know his father is President Smith? Or are you trying to cozy up now that you know Ethan is Mr. Maverick? Yeah, we still haven't forgiven you, and the seniors got increasingly noisy. Jason mumbled, that's not what I meant, looking flustered. As the situation became unmanageable, the phone rang loudly. When I answered the phone, I heard a voice pleading, please help me. I felt a strong sense of déjà vu, but the caller wasn't from White Works from yesterday. It was a different client company. Hearing their story on the phone, I inadvertently exclaimed, what? Causing everyone who had been making noise until just now to look over at me. The call was about a more significant malfunction that had occurred after a recent issue they thought had been fixed. The person in charge of it was Jason. Can you absolutely fix it by tomorrow? We can't work like this. Could you please explain the details of the malfunction first? They said they would send the details of the malfunction in an email, which promptly arrived for Jason. We all gathered around the computer to check the email and were shocked by the massive amount of content. This amount of malfunction by tomorrow? That's impossible. This is an unreasonable request. While everyone was outraged, the content seemed manageable, not too difficult. Maybe we can do this. I reassured Jason, it's okay, we can handle this. In response, he shouted, what are you talking about? Is this some kind of revenge on me? Don't be ridiculous. Yes, it's a lot, but the content doesn't seem too hard, I replied. When I said that, Jason revisited email. Indeed, the content doesn't seem too different from the previous bug, he muttered after reviewing email contents. Right, we'll be okay. We can manage it today if we all work together, I told my seniors. I really appreciate you all getting angry on my behalf, but let's prioritize our work now. Our important client is in trouble, and we shouldn't let them down any further. You're a good guy, Ethan. Right, clients come first, not Jason. But we'll make sure to settle things later. Despite someone's threatening words, we decided to focus on the task at hand. All right, let's all work hard together, I said, raising my right hand. Then, everyone joined in, cheering in unison. Everyone, I'm sorry to ask, but please help out. I will distribute the printed emails detailing the bugs. Can those who can start working on it right away please begin? Yes. Almost everyone from our department, including myself, took on the task, and we managed to resolve all the malfunctions just as the date was about to change. We're done. Everyone seemed exhausted, including myself. Jason, too, was sprawled across his desk. We just managed to make the deadline. It's good that we finished. I thought it was impossible, but we did it. Of course, we could. Jason is competent, but so is everyone here, all excellent engineers and programmers. Brandon, who said that, also looked completely exhausted. Usually, he's so energetic and the mood maker of our team. Thank you, everyone. I'm sorry for causing all this trouble. It's too late now. We're expecting better from Jason in the future. As everyone was too exhausted to even get up, I was called by my name, Ethan. It was Jason. Yes. In a rush, I lifted my head, but was told, stay as you are, that's fine. Thanks to you, we were saved today, thank you. No, I didn't do much. I'm sorry for not letting you work as a programmer before. Today, I experienced your excellence as a programmer firsthand. I truly realized you are Mr. Maverick. I'm genuinely sorry for treating you poorly just because you were a high school graduate. I'm planning to tell President Smith I'm ready for any punishment. What? I've upset everyone, and I can't remain as section chief after this. Perhaps I wasn't suited for this position. If everyone and President Smith agree I should resign, I will step down and start again as a regular employee." Jason's face showed a resolved expression, as if he had come to terms with something. Given how far he's willing to go, he might truly resign as a section chief. That must be Jason's way of taking responsibility. "I understand. I accept your apology, Jason." I said that. Today, programming education starts as early as elementary and middle school, and there are even programming schools. So, regardless of academic background, many talented individuals are entering the workforce. Please don't look down on such young people in the future. I swear I won't do that again," Jason promised. "Your skills, Jason, are truly impressive. You fixed the bugs effortlessly, and your instructions to everyone were spot on. You even provided subtle support. I believe you're still suited for a leadership role like a section chief." When I said that, Jason looked like he didn't expect such words but finally said, "Thank you." A few days later, Jason really was demoted from section chief and became a regular employee like us. My father said maybe demotion wasn't necessary. But Jason stubbornly replied, "I can't accept it." So, Brandon, the mood maker of our department, became the new section chief, and we continued to work hard. As Jason became my desk neighbor, we talked more and seemed to get along better than before. Then, I asked Jason something I had always wanted to know. "Jason, what was Oxford University like? Are you interested?" he asked. "Yes, I've always been curious but never had the chance to ask." Jason responded to me saying, "All right, let me tell you about it." He has become much more amiable. Then Jason shared various details about Oxford University. It's located in the heart of Oxford, famous university with many notable alumni. The campus is incredibly vast, almost like a town in itself. There's joint research with venture companies. Many students are entrepreneurs, and there's a diverse international community allowing for plenty of interaction. Amazing. I'd like to visit there someday. Your eyes are sparkling. Just imagining it seems fun. Why not join a campus store designed for tourists? That sounds fun, but actually, I've been thinking about going to college lately. When I said that, Jason exclaimed, "What, Ethan, you're considering college?" Well, after being called a high school graduate by you, I started to think about it. "Ethan, are you being sarcastic?" Jason glared at me, so I replied, "No, not at all." Though secretly, there was a bit of sarcasm. Until recently, I had no interest in studying. I thought it'd be nice to just do what I love and live my life. I love this job and never regretted not going to college. I even wanted to start working right after middle school. I heard from President Smith, "You were really considering working right after middle school." But observing you, Jason, someone with both work expertise and cultured intelligence, I've started to slightly regret not attending college. That's why I wanted to learn about Oxford University, where you studied. I guess college graduates are different after all. Then Jason thought for a moment and asked, "Ethan, have you discussed this college idea with your parents?" I shook my head. "No, it's still a vague idea." "Ethan, you've graduated high school, so you can go to college anytime. With your skills, you might be able to attend college while working. This job can be done remotely. If you really want to go to college, I think you should go. If you're worried about balancing work and studies, I'll help you in any way I can and promise to do my utmost. It might not make up for looking down on you and hurting you," Jason continued, and I was utterly surprised. Jason, he has become such a good person. "Jason, you've changed." I couldn't help but say that, and he responded with a wry smile. "I'm really sorry for how I was at the beginning. But I'll do anything you ask, Mr. Maverick. Please, stop with the formalities." With Jason's encouragement, I seriously started considering pursuing college. Then, I told my parents I wanted to go to college. Now 22, I am aiming for college. I'd prefer to attend a college abroad, particularly Oxford University. I've shared my plans to balance work with study preparation and my intention to try again next year if I don't pass this year. From the kid who talked about working right after middle school, my mom started crying. I wondered why she kept bringing that up, but I suppose it's proof of how much trouble I've caused, so I couldn't say anything. Of course, I was all for it. Parents want to support their children's efforts. Keep at it until you're satisfied. Expanding your interests is good, he said. With my parents' blessing, I started preparing for the entrance exams while working. Of course, I aimed for Oxford University. Jason helped me with exam preparation, teaching me a lot. He also introduced me to some of his foreign friends from college days to help me learn more. Eventually, when my seniors in the department learned that I was aiming for Oxford University, they began supporting me significantly. They even told me, focus more on your exam preparation than work, and took over some of my tasks to help me out. With everyone's support, I passed the entrance exams and finally became a university student. Having passed, I am departing for England from United States tomorrow. Thinking it was my last chance, I came to say goodbye to my seniors. I had finished all my work handovers, and all that was left was to clean around my desk. Ethan, it's going to be lonely. I've known you since you were a little kid. It feels like losing a family member. It's really sad. That little elementary school kid who used to run around is now going off to college, they said one after another, making me feel really appreciated. Ethan, we all wrote messages for you. Please take this. Jason handed me a colored paper filled with words from my seniors, and it made me tear up. I'll take this to college. I hugged the paper tightly, and then my father appeared. Ethan, 4 years will fly by. We'll keep your seat open, so study hard and come back, said my father, the company president. That's right. If you have a summer break or something, make sure to come back. Let's talk about programming again. If I encounter something at work I can handle, I'll call you right away, so make sure to answer. Everyone chimed in with their words. Lastly, Jason said, it's truly amazing that you got into college, Ethan. It's all the result of your hard work. I'll keep your seat safe here. So do your best. I couldn't help but cry at that. Feeling blessed with such good colleagues, I left the company and departed United States the next day. As a university student, I enjoyed my campus life while studying every day. Today, as I was studying in my room, I heard a notification sound ping. It was the sound of receiving an email. It was an email from my father about recent updates. It said that Jason was decided to be the section chief again. Wow, that's great, I exclaimed without thinking. Jason had really changed since then, becoming more polite and considerate to everyone. It seems like there's no trace of his old self now. I remembered my father mentioning in secret that he wanted to offer Jason the vice president position. I hurriedly sent a message to Jason. I heard you're becoming the section chief again. Congratulations. Despite the time difference, I immediately got a reply from Jason. Thank you. I'll be visiting England, so let's meet up then. Of course, let's definitely meet, I replied. The encounters and events with Jason were shocking, but they undoubtedly changed my life. After all, I am now a university student. It's something the old me could never have imagined. I believe it's because Jason himself changed that we are what we are today. If we had remained at odds, neither of us would be where we are now. Life is unpredictable. I realized that people can change in any direction depending on their thoughts and efforts. I want to continue cherishing the connections with people who have touched my life and live on with gratitude. Ouch, that hurts. Suddenly, a girl walking in front of him slipped and fell. Are you okay? While on my break, heading to get a convenience store lunch, I quickly approached her to offer help. It looks like I twisted my ankle. Ouch. Oh no, what should I do? I won't make it to my exam. She spoke in a panicked tone. Her words caught my attention, and I asked her to clarify. An exam. What happened? Well, it seemed she was startled, being approached by a stranger out of the blue. She distances herself from me a little bit. I continued to speak to her gently. I'm not a creep. Maybe you're in some kind of trouble. If you tell me what's going on, perhaps I can help. Then, with a look of distress, she replied, Actually, I got the train schedule mixed up for my college entrance exam. At this rate, I'm going to miss it. I see what's the problem now. I'm a taxi driver. You know the location of that venue, right? A taxi driver. Her eyes sparkled for a moment, but then she looked down with a gloomy face again. But I'm not sure if I have enough money. Don't worry about it. If you're short, I'll cover it for now. Really? Are you sure? I returned her surprise with a smile. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Got it. Let's hurry to the venue then. After that, I rushed her to the university exam venue at full speed in my taxi. She was frantically reviewing her notes, all absorbed in her preparations. Luckily, the roads were clear that day, and we were able to get to the venue smoothly without getting stuck at any traffic lights. Thank you, really, thank you so much. Just go. Hurry up and get to the venue. Yes, thank you. She kept bowing to me as she made her way to the venue. I watched her until she was out of sight. Then, a few years later, on a certain day, while I was driving with a customer on board, I could hear some chatter coming from the back seat. What's wrong with the matchmaking partner I picked for her? He's a member of the same business owners gathering as I am. There's nothing to complain about him financially. He's got a good character, and I want to see my grandkids soon. It's sad to think I might not see my daughter's kids. She'd prefer someone with a more down-to-earth job. I don't know what to do with that. He sighed as he spoke. I nodded along, listening to his words. This man, Mr. Smith, often used our taxi service and was a regular customer. He always calls his daughter when he's in the taxi, but it seems she's not interested in relationships or marriage, even at her age. I think it's fine to stay single nowadays, and if she's not interested, she shouldn't be pushed into marriage. As a parent, I think it's better for my daughter to get married sooner rather than later. You know, raising kids takes energy, and it seems she doesn't have a boyfriend to speak of, which worries me. She doesn't even know about dating, but she doesn't like the sound of arranged dates with other business owners, either. Now she says she wants someone with a down-to-earth job, not a CEO or anything. It's a bit of a wishful thinking. Yeah, I hear you. Thinking to myself that being a father is tough, I kept listening. Then Mr. Smith dropped a bombshell. That's right, you're single, aren't you? How about you meet my daughter for a matchmaking date? What do you mean? Well, she needs to get used to these situations, doesn't she? It's just a bit of practice. How about it? Will you join me? Just go on 2 or 3 dates, that's all I ask. Before that, I'll get turned down. I said with a laugh, and in response, Mr. Smith got out of the car saying, I'll contact you again then. After that, somehow, I ended up agreeing to practice for an arranged date practice with Mr. Smith's daughter. When he told her about an arranged date with a taxi driver, she seemed more positive than usual and insisted on meeting, even if just once, so he pushed the conversation forward. Well, seriously, Mr. Smith is an important client. I thought I had to do as he said, and the day arrived. Before the arranged date, I secretly met with Mr. Smith to discuss the details. You know, when I told my daughter, she started saying she's more interested in a taxi driver than a CEO. Why is that? I asked, puzzled, and Mr. Smith started to explain. Well, it turns out she fell in love at first sight with a guy before she entered college. She doesn't know his name. It was a kind taxi driver who helped her get to her entrance exam venue when she took the wrong train. She lost his business card and even forgot to note down the taxi company's name. Such a klutz. What? I exclaimed loudly in response to Mr. Smith's words. Huh? Something wrong? No. It just feels like something similar happened a few years back. Oh really? How many years ago was that? It's been about 6 years now. That's around the time my daughter started college. Could it be? You're the one. The one. You're my daughter's destiny. What? I couldn't help but express my surprise at Mr. Smith's remark. Wait a minute. People often say it's a small world, but could such a story be true? That a girl I once drove in my taxi years ago would turn out to be the daughter of a client. That doesn't normally happen. It's fate. This is fate. I'm not quite following the story here. Please, I'm asking you to take today's arranged date with my daughter seriously. But Mr. Smith, let's calm down. Are you sure your daughter is the same girl I drove? We need to confirm that first. That's right. Let's go confirm it right now. Okay, I'll go. Just please don't pull on my clothes. I cautioned the excited Mr. Smith as we headed to the upscale restaurant for the arranged date. I'm begging you, it's a request for life. Otherwise, I may never see my grandchildren. Okay, just calm down. Well, right. And so, I waited at the restaurant for her to arrive. Mr. Smith parted ways with me as if nothing had happened and headed towards the lobby where he was meeting his daughter. Nice to meet you. Oh, we looked at each other, and immediately, memories of the past came flooding back. No way, you're the taxi driver from back then. You're the girl from that time. Sure enough, Mr. Smith's hunch was right. His daughter was indeed the girl I had given a cab ride years ago. Who would have thought we'd meet again after so many years? It's quite a surprise. We continued our excited conversation in a private dining room of a high-end restaurant. Oh, by the way, did you do okay on your entrance exam that day? Yes, I passed successfully and graduated the year before last. I really had a wonderful 4 years. That's great to hear. Who I am today is all thanks to you, the driver. If you hadn't driven me that day, I wouldn't have been able to attend that university. I don't know how to thank you. I wanted to contact you right after that day and looked for your business card, but I must have dropped it somewhere and couldn't find it. I didn't even know the name of your company, so I couldn't express my gratitude, and for that, I'm really sorry. She bowed deeply. It was nothing big, really. Come on, lift your head. I'm just glad you made it to your exam on time. I had always wondered about that day, so hearing this from her made me genuinely happy. Mr. Smith was listening to our exchange, nodding emphatically and saying, I knew it. While glancing at her father, she whispered to me, did you by any chance get hit with the please take care of my daughter spiel? Well, as I scratched my head in embarrassment, she bowed deeply again. I'm truly sorry. I had to do it, otherwise, when would you ever find a husband? Mr. Smith said with a pointed look. Listen, Dad, I'm still in my 20s. I want to focus on my career a little longer. But, I did bring someone you like. Look, we just met briefly years ago. Sure, I always said that if I were to marry, I'd want someone who can act kindly on the spur of the moment, like the taxi driver from that time. But if we were actually to date, that's a different story, isn't it? We both need time to prepare ourselves emotionally. So, how about you give it a trial period and start dating now? What the heck? Now? With a sigh, she buried her face in her hands. Mr. Smith, it seems like Madison still wants to focus on her career, and I'm not exactly swimming in cash right now either. I'm also questioning whether I'm really in the same league as a CEO's daughter like Madison. After I said that, Mr. Smith replied, these days, it's not easy to have a good time in any job nowadays. Running a company is especially challenging. Anyway, you two had a fateful meeting, so it's all right to date each other, right? After all, both of you had quite the memorable introduction. Looking at Mr. Smith's carefree attitude, I couldn't help but feel a bit exasperated. I don't mind if Madison isn't against the idea. Really, you're okay with someone like me. If you're not into it, that's totally fine. No, it's not that I'm not into it. Well then, if it's okay with you, Would you like to start dating? Yes, I would. Yes. Now I'll get to see my first grandchild. I had agreed to proceed with the relationship as planned in our meeting. But man, who would have thought that I'd end up dating the girl I saved 6 years ago? And all because of her father's assertive matchmaking. Man, today was a good day, wasn't it? Mr. Smith was in high spirits during the dinner, and the drinks were flowing. Anyway, our next day off is definitely a date, huh? Yes, sure. With a smile, Mr. Smith seemed very pleased, while I was slightly taken aback responding to him, and Madison just gave a wry smile. Thanks to Mr. Smith's assertive suggestion, we quickly arranged our schedules and decided to meet up again soon. I'm really sorry for the trouble my dad caused the other day. No, I should apologize for not being considerate enough. As soon as we met up at the cafe, we were both apologizing to each other. So, about this conversation, I get it. Even after that, being told to just start dating out of the blue. At that time, I was swept up by Mr. Smith's momentum, but I didn't think it was possible to start a relationship with a woman in such a forceful way. That's what I believed, but her response took me by surprise. No, if you're okay with it, why don't we really start dating? Excuse me, I told my father, but it's true that I've been thinking about you ever since that day. After all, I want the person I marry to be someone who can help me in times of need. I was at a loss for words to her statement. I'm already well past my mid-30s. I felt that there was a bit of an age gap. I certainly didn't think there were young women in their 20s who would want to date me. But then, if you don't mind me, I would like to date you. Just, if we get married or have children, I want to continue working. So unless you can accept that, I can't consider a relationship with marriage in mind. Oh, that's no problem at all. I smiled at her words. In the past, there may have been a time when it was assumed women would just stay at home, but these days there are few husbands who would say such a thing. It's important that we support each other in life. I have no intention of taking away what's important to you. With that, she smiled brightly. My dad has been saying he wants you to eventually take over the company. If you're willing, would you consider coming to my dad's company? I won't say anymore that I'm not up for the CEO's job. Actually, I've been working as an administrative assistant at my dad's company. She was quickly moving the conversation forward. No, let's slow down a bit on that, I responded, my mind reeling. It seems Madison, Mr. Smith's daughter, is as eager as he is. Right, I'm getting ahead of myself again. I always do this. Let's just enjoy our day today. I didn't have any more room in my head to think. Just being with such a charming young lady was overwhelming enough. Who would have thought, in my mid-30s, I'd have such a fateful encounter that could pretty much decide my future? And with a girl I met by chance 6 years ago. Shall we go then? Yes, let's. At that moment, I took her soft hand, glanced at her profile, and felt a spark. With her, I felt like we could enjoy our days together. After today's date, I decided to officially ask her out. That's what I resolved. The door opened, and my childhood friend, Scott, along with his wife, Sarah, entered with big smiles on their faces. I looked at the happy couple and sincerely blessed Scott, who had always been there to support me. My name is Ethan, 28 years old. Today, I'm attending the wedding of Scott, a close friend I've known since we were kids. I've had a limp ever since I was diagnosed with Perthes disease as a child. Perthes disease is a condition where a part of the hip bone dies off, and I was diagnosed when I was 12. I grew up in a rural area in the mountains, similar to the Appalachian region, so it was hard to find good doctors. But Scott was always there for me, caring and being by my side. The bride, Sarah, seems calm and is such a pleasant lady. Congrats, Scott and Sarah. I clapped joyfully for them multiple times. Given that Sarah is a hairstylist, Many of her friends from the bride's side looked glamorous and stylish. There were even some famous models, regulars in magazines. Even the groom's buddies seemed quite excited about that. I was focused on Scott's wedding, but some even left their seats to ask those models for photos. Come on, what are you doing? This isn't a mixer party. Focus on Scott and Sarah. Though I was irritated, I didn't have the courage to reprimand them. Because when I get up limping, people usually give me a strange look due to my limp. I've gotten used to it, but it's still not a good feeling. The most challenging thing since I was diagnosed with Perf's disease was obstructing others because of my slow walking pace. Being stared at or getting annoyed looks from strangers is an everyday occurrence. Some were rude, getting mad at me for no reason, causing endless troubles. So, being in a crowd, like today, is where I'm most nervous and is something I really dislike. But for Scott, my dear friend, I traveled using unfamiliar trains to be here. So, I was extremely careful not to get in the way of those taking photos and making a fuss. The ceremony ended without a hitch under the clear blue sky. Scott and Sarah, with big smiles on their faces, were showered with colorful flower petals. The flower shower had begun. I was on the church stairs, holding petals, saying congratulations to them with all my heart. The flower shower ended peacefully, but when I was about to go down the stairs, I expected it, but something unfortunate happened. Someone shouted from behind, "Hurry up, you're too slow." As expected, an impatient woman's voice echoed. To be honest, stairs are the most challenging thing for me with my limp. I can't go down quickly, but I try my best not to inconvenience everyone. I felt like I was a burden again. My euphoria from celebrating Scott just moments ago vanished instantly. When things like this happen, apologizing is the only option. I've learned this the hard way in my life. I quickly moved to the side of the stairs, holding the railing, saying, "I'm so sorry, please, go ahead." I gestured them to pass by. I thought that was that. But then, that comment was very rude. An elegant middle-aged woman, dressed sharply in what looked like a formal outfit, held my shaky hand. "Take your time and be careful," she said, accompanying me down the stairs. I somehow managed to get to the bottom floor and said, "Thank you so much, you truly saved me." Hearing this, the woman slowly shook her head. Then, she lowered her head to me and said, "I should be the one apologizing. The person who made that comment earlier was likely one of our employees. I'm terribly sorry." To my surprise, she apologized. As I stood there in shock, the woman took out a business card from her bag and handed it to me. The card read, "Kathleen Smith, Salon Marie, owner." It turned out that the woman in the dress, Kathleen, was the owner of the hair salon and the aunt of Scott. The woman who had complained earlier appeared to be an employee at Kathleen's salon. To be honest, I wasn't too bothered by her earlier comments. Because I've been through similar experiences countless times, and I've always thought that if I let them hurt me, I'd be losing. So I candidly said, "Please don't worry about what happened earlier. It's true I was slow, and such incidents are common for me. More than that, thank you for your concern." I opened up about my feelings and prepared to leave. Kathleen then sincerely said, "You are truly a humble and wonderful person. I wish my employees could learn from you." Her words somehow comforted me. After the wedding ceremony, inside the church, I was rushing to the reception venue. Suddenly from behind, I heard, "I'm really sorry about earlier. Are you all right?" I quickly turned around, and there was a woman holding a business card. Yes, it was the same woman who had shouted at me earlier. She looked to be in her early 20s, younger than me, with a bold makeup, giving a vibe of a typical young lady these days. Though I was taken aback, I reassured her with a smile. She probably got scolded by Kathleen and was trying to make amends. I neither had any anger towards her or any particular interest. after accepting her apology, just when I was about to leave the scene. "Wait, to make it up to you. Would you let me give you a free haircut next time?" she said, still looking apologetic, and forcefully handed me her business card. Caught off guard by her sudden offer, I kept my composure and with a smile said, "Thank you for your kindness," and took the card before parting ways with her. Throughout my life, I've been hurt and pitied for my disability countless times. So, I honestly didn't feel like looking at her card, assuming her offer was just a lip service. After attending Scott and Sarah's reception, I put her card in my suit's inner pocket and even forgot about our agreement. However, sometime after Scott's wedding, I got a call. "Hey, Ethan, it's me. Thanks for coming to our wedding." It was Scott himself. "Hey Scott, back from your honeymoon. It was such a wonderful wedding." I congratulated Scott once more. Scott mentioned how he and Sarah went to Hawaii and enjoyed scuba diving, and his voice sounded lively. Then, out of the blue, he said, "Actually, the reason I called today is, someone here wants to talk to you." Hang on. The voice changed to a woman's. It's Maria Smith, the one who gave you a card at the wedding. Why haven't you visited the salon? Are you still mad at me?" Caught off guard by her rapid-fire questions, I was perplexed. Who is this? The wedding, the card, the salon. After a few moments, I remembered. I hurriedly searched for her card in my suit's pocket and found it. The card read, "Hairstylist, Maria Smith." I honestly explained the situation to Maria. "It's okay. I'm not mad at all. I just forgot about our appointment. I'm so sorry." Hearing my apology, Maria sounded genuinely relieved. "Got it. Just let me know when you're available. I promise to give you the best haircut as an apology." I was puzzled by her insistence, but I thought, why not, and made an appointment for a haircut. The day of my appointment with Maria. After finishing work, I went to the hair salon where she works. It's already past 8 p.m. Since it's after business hours, only Maria was left in the salon. From what I gathered, Maria seems to be an apprentice hairstylist. While she was cutting my hair, she told me that she practices cutting and curling hair late every day, aiming to win the next hairdressing competition. But then, she paused and said, "My boss favors others and lets them participate in the contests. That's why I never get a chance. I'm still just an assistant, stuck washing hair." I began to resent the other staff members, and I couldn't enjoy my job as a hairstylist. Maria's story was candid and touching. Then she continued. "At Scott's wedding, I got scolded big time by my boss. She said that narrow-minded people, those who can't be happy for others, can't win in contests, no matter how skilled they are, that they're failures both as hairstylists and as human beings." It really got me down. Then Maria revealed a surprising fact. At that wedding, I was heartbroken. Turns out, Scott is my cousin, the older brother I've always looked up to, but he got taken by Sarah, the top hairstylist in our store. I'm totally outmatched by Sarah, both professionally and personally. That's why I was so frustrated and treated Ethan so badly at the happy event. I'm truly sorry. I couldn't help but ask something that was on my mind. "So, are you by any chance Kathleen's daughter?" When I asked that, Maria looked embarrassed and nodded. After listening to her whole story, I couldn't help but laugh. "So, that's what's been bothering you." I feel the same way, exactly the same. Maria looked puzzled, but I kept talking. I used to feel the same way. I'd look at able-bodied people and wonder, why isn't happiness coming my way? Why does my life have so many challenges? But no matter how much I worried, nothing changed. So I realized I had to change. I had to fully accept my situation. Thinking back, I used to get frustrated and take it out on my family. But once I took the first step, I met Scott, a truly kind-hearted best friend. I realized that while I might not be athletic, I was good at studying. After a lot of hard work, I managed to get into a prestigious college's science department. Now, I'm doing pretty well in a big company. I've learned to avoid people who find me annoying, and to genuinely appreciate those like Kathleen who helped me. When I shared this with Maria, she was crying. You're absolutely right. I've been too focused on my insecurities. I'll try to live more honestly and sincerely. Your words really resonated with me. Thank you. Every time she cried, her thick foundation and heavy mascara ran. Upon closer look, her skin was very clear, and she looked much cuter without makeup. You don't have to be perfect like Kathleen or Sarah. You have your own unique qualities. Keep it up. While I was encouraging Maria, I was also cheering myself on. I need to work hard and learn from her. 1 year after Scott's wedding, I visit the salon Marie once a month to get my hair cut. Of course, my personal hairstylist is Maria. Actually, she has become a valuable partner in both my personal and professional life. As I started to date her and listen to her work challenges, I was drawn to her sincerity and hard-working nature. After we got together, Maria let go of her unnecessary insecurities and started focusing more on her job as a hairstylist. Kathleen even thanked me, saying Maria had become a considerate and good hairstylist. And now, I wholeheartedly support her as she works hard for the next competition. I hope that in the near future, Maria will become the #1 hairstylist. You're telling me my precious daughter Emily is getting married to a guy who graduated from an online high school. I was at a loss for words when I went to report our marriage to Emily's father, a practicing physician who has been successful in his own clinic. I was met with fierce opposition, his face turning beet red. No way, no way, no way, no way, don't be ridiculous. Emily will not marry someone like you. Emily's father was furiously scratching his head, clearly enraged. You could even hear the grinding of his teeth, as if he was biting down hard. Emily is my precious, precious only daughter, and you expect me to give her to someone with such a low education. If she marries a lowlife like you, even our grandkids will turn out stupid. Absolutely not. His voice cracking in places, he yelled at me. Having dated Emily for a long time, I had assumed her father would give us his blessing, but at that moment, I couldn't respond. Overwhelmed by the situation, Emily ran out of the house. Neither Emily's father nor I could have imagined the situation that would arise in a few years, far beyond any disagreement. My name is Addie. I've been childhood friends with the girl next door, Emily, playing together since we were little. I'd go over to Emily's house to play, and she'd come over to mine. Close to graduating from preschool, we were sitting on a sofa at her house eating ice cream, when we made a promise: let's keep eating ice cream on this sofa when we become elementary students. Not just as elementary students, even when we become adults, even when we're old. Let's get married when we grow up. Yeah, those are some of the good memories of the promises we made. Emily's mother and my mom always warmly watched over us being so close. Emily's mother passed away unexpectedly when we were in elementary school. The cause of her passing was cervical cancer. During the funeral, Emily clung to her mother's casket, crying the entire time, and seeing her like that made me cry buckets too. And while crying, I apparently told my mom, "I'll protect Emily." I don't remember saying it, but as Emily became gloomy without her mother, and I spent every day comforting and being with her, I truly started to feel the need to protect her. Emily's dad, called Robert, was a doctor well trusted in our local community in a place that could be compared to a well-known suburb in Illinois. Though primarily an internal medicine physician, he would also see us for head injuries or other ailments and help decide whether we should go to the larger hospital in town. But usually, his treatments and medicine did the trick. Ever since I was born, for vaccinations during preschool and for the slightest cough or stomachache, I was taken to Robert. I hated shots and always cried, but since Emily was by my side, they would have us get vaccinated together. Those are now fond memories. When Emily and I reached our junior year in middle school, we started studying together daily at her house, planning to go to the same high school. Emily had a housekeeper named Mrs. Brown, who took care of everything for Robert, who was too busy with his practice. This allowed Emily to focus fully on her club activities and entrance exam preparations. Mrs. Brown would make us sweet treats as a snack, and it was so delicious and comforting, a perfect treat for our study sessions. Thanks to our perseverance, and perhaps the sweet treats, we both passed the entrance exams to the most prestigious high school in a location similar to the outskirts of a big city like San Francisco, reached by a combination of bus and train. Both my parents and Robert were thrilled with our success. By this time, Emily had fully adapted to life without her mother. Mrs. Brown's cheerful presence was likely a big help. In elementary school, Emily often showed tears, but now she rarely ever cried, showing me her bright smile every day. And yet, this time, it was my fault that Emily's smile faded. It was the winter of my freshman year in high school. I went to Robert's place to get her flu shot, and as I was leaving, he called me back and made me sit in the examination chair again. He carefully palpated around my neck and under my arms. "I hope I'm just overthinking this, but your lymph nodes seem a bit swollen. And Rue, you should go to the city hospital with your mom." Robert's face was unusually serious, and I managed to suppress the rising anxiety as I went home. Then, on the following Monday, with the referral letter in hand, I went to the city hospital, and I was diagnosed with malignant lymphoma. Malignant lymphoma, not an easy illness to overcome. No, it wasn't even clear if I could get better. I decided to quit high school and focus on treatment. At first, I was just scared of the stark outline of life that had suddenly become so clear to me. In the days from the discovery until hospitalization, I was so afraid of the passage of time that I stayed in my house with the curtains closed. Emily just sat by me without saying anything, just being there. "I might lash out at you because of my state of mind. Please go home." Even when I told her that, Emily didn't leave. "It's okay to take it out on me as much as you need. You shouldn't be alone right now, Auntie." Emily, who I thought was just a kind girl, had become a strong woman before I knew it. And for me, who couldn't bring myself to leave my room, she brought me meals. "I don't want to eat this." I knew that my mom was worried about me and made nutritious food. She was trying her best because once I was hospitalized, I wouldn't be able to eat her home cooking for a while. But still, I said that. "You don't have to eat it all, just try a bite while it's warm." Emily said that and scooped a spoonful of the cream stew my mom had made and offered it to me. "I don't want it," I said, even as I was crying. Then Emily forced the stew into my mouth. The taste of that stew was sweeter, creamier, and more vegetable flavored than any I'd had before. It was just the best. Before I knew it, I was clutching the spoon, crying, and had finished the entire plate. "Emily." "What is it?" "Emily, I will definitely come back. I'll get better for sure. When I'm discharged, please let me eat your stew." "Okay, I'll learn how to make stew from your mother, so I can cook something really tasty for you, so you have to get better and come back home." Saying that, Emily hugged me. We cried and held each other tightly. I couldn't break the promise I made with Emily. I swore in my heart that I would overcome any treatment. But as I swore, the treatment for lymphoma was no small ordeal. The drugs wreaked havoc on my organs, and radiation therapy made my hair fall out. Especially hard was when a patient in the same room had a sudden change and didn't come back. The thought of possibly ending up like that myself one day. It was terrifying beyond words. Through all my anxiety, Emily was still by my side. After her club activities, she would visit me in the hospital every day, and we would spend time together in the lounge until the visiting hours ended. She talked about what happened at school today, how Robert was worried about me, and even the love stories of our classmates. Although I had to drop out of school, I felt like I was still attending because Emily shared stories with me every day. This went on for a while. Thanks to the doctors and nurses, my illness gradually improved. It took quite some time, and by then Emily and the others were already in their senior year of high school, so my dream of returning to school seemed out of reach, but I was filled with joy that I was nearing remission. Next to Emily, who came to the lounge, I decided to study as well. My studies had come to a halt after freshman year of high school, so I was starting over from that point, but it turned into days where Emily and I would study together every day. Whenever I didn't understand something, Emily would explain it to me. If Emily didn't understand it either, I would write a letter to my old high school teachers. Despite the fact that I had already left the school, every teacher would kindly write out explanations and hand them to Emily. Everyone was rooting for me. Feeling this support made my passion for studying, which had been fading, reignite. The day I was discharged from the hospital and returned home had arrived. For dinner, Emily, who had learned the recipe from my mom, made a creamy chicken stew. Remembering the stew from when I was hospitalized, Emily, my parents, and I couldn't stop our tears. Even after starting rehab at home and being declared in remission, it wasn't smooth sailing, but it was definitely easier than when I was hospitalized. Emily decided to become a nurse, influenced by my time in the hospital. She was inspired by seeing the nurses working as key players in the hospital. Watching Emily work hard at nursing school, I decided to attend a correspondence high school. I aimed to get the qualifications for university admission and, if possible, I wanted to become a doctor. Now that I was getting better, I felt a strong desire to heal sick people, just as I had been. Once I started at the correspondence high school, I studied fiercely. Emily was still by my side, reviewing what she learned at school that day, while I worked on past university entrance exams. I knew that other guys my age already had cars and motorcycles, taking friends out for drives, or treating them to meals at fancy restaurants with money they earned from part-time jobs. I felt apologetic for being an exam student at this time, but Emily didn't seem to care about it. Let's progress at our own pace. I'm happy enough just seeing you getting better, she would say. And then, the spring when Emily graduated from nursing school, I was accepted into the medical school at a university in New York. I really wanted to take her to New York with me, but Emily had secured a job at the hospital where I had been admitted. Study as much as you need to. I'll wait for you, no matter how long it takes. Those were Emily's words as I boarded the train headed for New York. I will definitely come back here. Looking into her eyes, I promised her firmly. Although we had been physically apart during my hospitalization, we had been close in distance, but now I would be in New York. Starting a new chapter away from Emily, with whom I'd spent nearly every day since we were small, was unnerving. But I took the memories of our time together and sank into the express train seat. I would become a doctor in New York and then surely return to my hometown. I'd become a doctor like Robert. Holding both hands tightly, I felt my familiar town getting farther away. Years passed. I passed my medical licensing exam without a hitch. After finishing my residency, I returned to my hometown. Of course, I stayed in touch with Emily while I was in New York, and we met up during the long breaks, but now we can be together all the time again. Closer than ever before. Because this spring, we decided to get married. I stepped off the high-speed train and transferred to a local line. Straight from the station in my hometown, I dropped by Emily's place. "It's Andy. I came back home today." I was greeted by the housekeeper, Mrs. Brown. "I heard the news. Andy, you're getting married to Emily, aren't you? Congratulations. You two have been through a lot, but you've overcome it together. Truly, congratulations." Mrs. Brown said, tears of joy streaming down her face. Yes, a lot has happened, Emily said with a gentle smile. Sorry for making you feel lonely, but I won't be away anymore, except for nights when I'm on call. That's nothing, just a moment compared to when you were in New York, Emily joked, and the three of us laughed together. We relaxed, drinking tea Mrs. Brown had made, waiting for Robert to come home. Once he arrived, I would give my marriage greeting, and then the four of us would laugh together over Morty. That was my intention. Emily getting married to you. Robert. Having been with Emily all this time, it never crossed my mind that Robert would oppose us now. I was caught off guard and lost for words. No way, no way, no way, no way, don't be ridiculous. I won't let Emily marry you, Robert raged, scratching his head in fury. Emily's. He clenched his back teeth after saying that. I could hear the grinding sound. She's my precious, precious only daughter. How could I give her to someone with such a low education? Your kids would turn out to be fools. Absolutely not. Robert's voice broke in places as he shouted at me. I realized something was wrong. Although we hadn't met recently, I've known Robert for a long time. He really isn't the type to say such things. Dad. Emily stood up with a clatter. How can you say such things to Andy? Just because you have a graduate degree. Calling him low-educated makes no sense. You know we've always been together, Dad. I can't believe you would say such things. Unbelievable. With that, Emily stormed out of the house, her face flushed with anger. That's right, Robert. You know how much these kids care for each other. Emily's right. I know that. I do know that. Mrs. Brown agreed, but Robert just shook his head with his eyes closed. Robert, I tentatively called out to him. Understand me. Just understand my feelings, he said. Then he went into the back room and slammed the door. Mrs. Brown seemed unaware, and Emily was no longer in the house, so I think I was the only one who noticed Robert was holding something back. He was probably holding back tears. His voice was choked up at the end. I didn't understand why he was crying, but I knew what he said to me wasn't what he meant. Maybe he was thinking about the time when I relapsed. He didn't want Emily to go through that hardship. Mrs. Brown, I'm going to look for Emily. I can't even apologize enough. I never would have thought Robert would say such things to you, Andy. Still, you're going to look for Emily. I don't think Robert meant to say those things. He's not that kind of person, and he was a little teary at the end. I think something's up. Please stay here for him, Mrs. Brown. I'll go find Emily. I left the house. It was March, yet still chilly. I ran to the places where Emily might have gone without even a coat. I found her at the second cafe I checked. Emily apologized repeatedly for making me feel bad. I just told her to come home, but she shook her head. And so, Emily started living alone near her workplace. Several months later. Recently, Emily, who had not been feeling well, called to say she was hospitalized. I rushed to her room. She said she had felt dizzy and came to the hospital, only to be admitted for testing. It seems she had severe anemia, and it was decided to investigate the cause. Hope it's nothing serious. I was on call that day, so during my breaks, I stayed in touch, hoping the tests would reveal nothing. But soon I got the call. Stage 2 cervical cancer was found. Emily was putting on a brave face, and although it was early stage, it was the same disease that took her mother. She couldn't help but feel anxious. Keeping in touch frequently, I spent time up until the end of my workday. As soon as I finished my work, I head to Emily's hospital room. To my surprise, Robert was also there. Emily, since that marriage proposal, I hadn't really had a proper conversation with Robert, but none of that mattered now. I rushed to Emily's bedside. What, it's you. You're still here with Emily, aren't you? It's because of someone like you that she got sick. Robert, no, that's not right. You shouldn't say such things to the doctor." A junior doctor who seemed to have been explaining Emily's condition to Robert hurriedly tries to stop him. "I'm terribly sorry, Dr. Bennett. He has been quite confused and upset. You don't have to use such formal language with this guy." No, Robert. This is Dr. Bennett. He graduated from a prestigious medical school in New York and went on to specialize in surgery. He's one of the top young doctors at this hospital and has successfully performed many cancer surgeries. It's said that you're in safe hands if Dr. Bennett is in charge. He's that kind of doctor. This guy, a doctor, a surgeon who graduated from a prestigious university in New York. Robert stood frozen as he looked at me. That's right. After graduating from a correspondence high school, I too became a doctor in New York. Now, I'll be the primary physician for Emily. I will ensure the surgery succeeds, even if it costs me my life. Please, entrust Emily to me." For a moment, Robert's eyes darted about in shock. "Dad." And he studied hard and made it into the competitive science program at a prestigious university in New York. And he really excelled at the university and became a doctor. "I want Andy to perform the surgery. I don't want it any other way," Emily said softly. "Robert, I've performed many surgeries for cervical cancer. I want to provide Emily with the best treatment possible. Could you please entrust me as her primary physician?" Andy. Snapping back to reality, Robert took my hand. I couldn't protect her. I regret every day that if I had paid more attention, I could have discovered her illness sooner. And now, to have Emily stricken with the same disease. When you told me about your intention to marry Emily, I said terrible things to you. It wasn't what I truly felt. I just couldn't bear the thought of letting Emily go. I wanted to keep her close, but with you, Andy, I had no reason to object. I thought I had found one reason to oppose and said those things. I don't know if it's too late to ask for forgiveness now, but I do want your forgiveness." Robert spoke with a choked voice, gripping my hand tightly. "Robert, please don't worry. I knew that wasn't what you really felt. And Emily, she was angry, but deep down, she loves you very much. That's why she contacted you immediately after finding out about her illness. Let's fight this disease together." The junior doctor, who had been explaining the test results, seemed to read the situation and left the room ahead of us. The three of us joined hands, promising each other a successful surgery. After that, given Emily's youth, the surgery was performed promptly. I was the surgeon, and the operation was a success. 5 years have passed since then. As her primary physician, I judged the chance of recurrence to be extremely low and concluded her treatment. "Once again, Andy, thank you for saving Emily, and for the awful things I said to you. I want to apologize again," Robert said, bowing deeply in the car on the way back from the hospital. "No, Robert, please lift your head. What I did was merely my duty as a doctor. Besides, I learned all of this from you. Watching you dedicate yourself to community health care inspired me to become a doctor. If Emily's illness is cured, it's thanks to your efforts, and you saved my life, too. If you hadn't noticed the swelling in my lymph nodes when I was in high school, I wouldn't be here right now." "We shouldn't talk about that time, Andy," Emily interrupted, tears welling up at the memory. "And there's no need for apologies, really. I knew at that time you didn't mean those words, and Emily was ready to marry me even without your blessing, but I was the one who said we should wait a bit longer." "Is that so? That's a relief, Emily. It's good that Andy was there for you, Andy. Please continue to look after my daughter." And so, our marriage, after a long wait, finally received Robert's blessing. We decided to hold the wedding in the courtyard of Robert's clinic. There were wedding venues in our hometown, though they weren't exactly modern. There were plenty of options if we went to the state capital, but that would have inconvenienced the guests. So we settled on the beloved clinic with many cherished memories, a place loved by the community. Robert attended the ceremony holding a photo of his late wife, and many locals came as well. Of course, many of my classmates from elementary to high school attended, making it an unforgettable wedding. I will officially take over Robert's clinic next spring. And of course, I plan to have Robert work with me part-time for a while. I will learn the ropes of community healthcare from him. I aim to become a family doctor who is as trusted and loved by the community as Robert. The real start begins now. I'm Matt, a journalist working at a publishing company. I'm in my 16th year with the company, turning 38 this year. After graduating from college, I moved to the big city, chasing a dream in the publishing world. Since joining the company, I have devoted my entire life to my work, in order to obtain a life in the city that is the envy of everyone. But despite my savvy efforts, reality hit hard. I remained an average, stuck with dull editing and proofreading tasks. Life at work and at home lacked fulfillment, and I grew increasingly fed up with it every day. Matt, yes, one lunchtime, I got called in by my boss. It seems the sales of our travel magazine are dipping. The usual features won't keep the readers around. Spice up the content of the articles a bit, will you? Yes, sorry about that. Our company is a general publisher, dealing with a wide variety of magazines. I handle a travel magazine that covers tourist spots in each state, but this type of content often overlaps with what other companies publish, which is a drawback as it tends to become stale. Have you been delegating the on-site research to your juniors lately? Yes. I mainly check and proofread the draft articles for the magazine. When I was new to the company, I used to visit the sites myself and travel around the country to do interviews, but by this age I had more junior staff and no longer had to take on the tedious task of interviewing people. In truth, visiting tourist spots in various places would yield the same results no matter who went. I did not want to do labor-intensive work. Isn't the reason you can't write engaging articles because you've been relying too much on your juniors for the research? My boss had seen right through my slacking off, and I ended up getting lectured about my work attitude. Indeed, the magazine's sales had been notably declining, often becoming a point of discussion in company meetings. If next month's sales don't improve, I'm considering transferring you to the General Affairs Department. What? No. The General Affairs Department was known in our publishing department as a catch-all for odd jobs and errands. There is a lot of work involved, and overtime is commonplace. It was obvious that it was a lot of troublesome work. If you don't like the sound of that, how about you do the on-site research yourself for a change? Me? Yes. Instead of leaving it all to the juniors, why don't you cover tourist spots that you'd personally recommend to our readers? Okay, I'll do it. When the boss orders, a regular employee like me has no right to refuse. The research for next month's article was already done, so any new article I write would only be published the month after next. Little did I know that the quality of the article would determine my fate. That evening, I returned to my one-bedroom apartment and collected the mail that had piled up in my mailbox. There were ads for real estate, newspaper subscriptions, and flyers for the local supermarket's flash sale. As I skimmed through them, I found a postcard tucked among the ads. What's this? On the back, it read, "Notice of Riversdale High School class reunion," with the date, time, and venue, along with a section to confirm attendance and the organizer's contact details. A high school reunion. I can't believe I'm getting an invite after all this time. It's been 16 years since I left for the city. I come from the middle of nowhere. From a village on a remote island, no less. Just getting to the mainland takes a 2-hour ferry ride. Life on that tiny, cramped island was peaceful in a way, but without any thrills. It felt unsatisfying. That's why I hated the countryside and quickly left for the city, where I was going to have a rich life that would be the envy of the country people on the island. Back home, the usual paths were either moving to the city or staying on the island to work. Mostly, those were the only options. Many of my classmates did not leave their familiar rural villages. Some took over family businesses that had been running for generations, while others got married following village customs. In a way, it was a carefree country life, but as a young man I had ambitions. Going against my parents' and relatives' wishes, I left the island alone. Since then, I've felt somewhat reluctant to return, and it's been a long time since I've been back home. I wonder how everyone's doing. Looking at the postcards, I went back to my memories of 20 years ago for the first time in a long time. Among those hazy recollections, there's a page of my youth still sparkling brightly. Next to my family home was a cozy little inn called Halls, and the daughter there, Natalie, was both a childhood friend and classmate of mine. We were close enough to commute to school together whenever we could, and I always harbored a tender affection for her, but never mustered the courage to confess before graduation. After moving to the city, I found out through a call from a close friend that she had secretly liked me back. I regretted not knowing her feelings earlier. I was worried about my parents, but for some reason I was so concerned about Natalie and her family's guest house that I couldn't stand still, so I took a pen out of my commuter bag and circled the attendance column on the postcard. A month later, I was on the ferry back to the island, using an assigned reporting day from work. Although the main reason was to attend a reunion rather than for the assignment, I still took out my reporter's notebook to jot down details of the transportation, cost, and travel time from the city center to the island. Never thought my first assignment in a while would be my own hometown. It was the island where I lived for 20 years, but to me, it was a place without interest, and I struggled with the idea of featuring it in a magazine article. The reunion was being held at the inn next to my family home, Halls. That's precisely why I decided to attend the reunion while visiting home. There's no use reminiscing about my youth or meeting my first love now, but as the reunion approached, I couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement as I remembered those days. Walking from the harbor to the bus stop and boarding the hourly bus, my destination was just around the corner. Nothing's changed at all. In the city, the scenery changes within a year. It's common for buildings to be renovated to keep up with the latest trends. But this island is different. It's timeless no matter when you visit. The rural landscape, surrounded by nature, seems frozen in time. As the countryside scenery flowed past the bus window, I felt as though my own time was rewinding back to high school. While being rocked by the bus, I took out my notebook and began to scribble a brief introduction to the island. 15 minutes later, getting off the bus, I climbed the familiar uphill path I knew from my school days. Back then, I had the energy to sprint up such slopes, but now just a short walk made me sweat and my breath quicken. After that, I took a casual stroll around the village and made sure I arrived at Hall's place about 20 minutes before the reunion was set to start. Hall's, just like the surrounding scenery, hadn't changed a bit since back in the day, and even the statue that stood guard by the entrance like a gatekeeper for the past 20 years was still there. When it starts to get dim, the light of the lanterns hung at the front entrance would light up, and even that orange glow was just as I remembered. As I put my hand on the door, I could faintly hear laughter leaking from inside. It seemed some of the attendees had already started drinking. With a wry smile to myself, I figured it wasn't too surprising since most of my classmates had stayed on the island and probably couldn't wait to get started. "Welcome, could it be Natalie?" "Huh, that voice, Matt." When I opened the door and stepped into the entryway, there to greet me was Natalie, clad in the inn's uniform, with a bandana wrapped around her head. "You really came." I said I would, didn't I? "It's been a while. You look well." "Yeah, you too, Matt. I heard from the organizer, Jake, that you were coming, but I just couldn't believe it." Natalie, slightly blushing, scratched her cheek with her fingertip and smiled cheerfully. Her smile, with two dimples on his cheeks, is still the same. "Thanks so much for coming all this way. It's not like I need to be thanked or anything." As I was caught off guard by Natalie's candid expression, a man dressed in the same uniform as Natalie came walking down the hall towards us. "Good evening, you must be Matt. Nice to meet you, I'm Bob, Natalie's husband." Yeah, nice to meet you, Matt." I was suddenly snapped back to reality when I saw Natalie's neighbor greeting me. Natalie is married. I'd heard through the grapevine that the eldest son of a farming family from the next village over had married with Natalie. I attended the reunion to see Natalie, but it was also to try and get past the regrets of an unrequited first love that I'd harbored since high school. "Looks like everyone else is here except for you, Matt. It's a bit early, but shall we start the reunion?" Natalie said with a smile, ushering me inside. I took off my shoes, stored them in the cubby, and followed her into the hall. "Matt, you're late, man. Come on over here, quick. Jake, it's been a while," I said as I sat down next to Jake, who had signaled me over enthusiastically as soon as I entered the banquet hall. Jake was my closest friend since high school, and since moving to the city, the only people I'd kept in touch with were my parents and Jake. "Are you doing well? You've really become a city slicker, huh? Wearing such an expensive-looking suit and all." "Nah, it's nothing special." Jake had become a fisherman, taking over his family's business after graduating from high school. There were supposed to be 2 other people living in the city attending the reunion, but it seems they canceled last minute due to sudden engagements. "I hear you've been slammed at work. Must be a hassle to head back to that tiny island. Moving to the big city has changed you, huh?" "Yeah, maybe. Sure, city life is flashy and fun, I'll give you that, but the island has its own charm. That's what I believe, anyway." As Jake chugged his beer and talked, I found myself at a loss for words. The other 2 felt much the same, I reckon. This time, it was just a chance to catch up with Natalie while I was home visiting. No denying it, going back to the rural island felt like a drag, that much was clear. "Here you go, some more shrimp for you." "Oh, I've been waiting for this." While Jake and I were deep in conversation, Natalie came over with a big smile, bringing some freshly prepared shrimp. The table was loaded with luxurious plates of seafood, and the high school friends chat got even more lively. Despite criticizing my hometown as a boring backwater, reminiscing with friends made me strangely buoyant, and before I knew it, I felt my frustrations clearing away. Around these old classmates, I could relax. No need to put on airs. "So, how are you doing these days?" Me. "Yeah, you, Matt. You must be doing well for yourself, right? Tell us some stories about the city." Natalie plopped down between Jake and me, and one by one, the others joined in the conversation. Before I knew it, I became the center of attention. "I'm working at a publishing company now. It's busy work, but putting a magazine together with the whole team is pretty rewarding, I'd say." "Wow, look at you. Publishing is something way out of reach for a farmer's second son like me." "Haha, Matt, you've got a different vibe than the rest of us island bumpkins." I'll admit, before I left for the city, I wanted to prove something to my parents and my classmates back home. "I'm not meant to be contained by this countryside," I thought, rebelling and moving to the city. But the reality is, I'm stuck at work, with no remarkable success stories or achievements to boast about. I used to brag about being respected by my juniors or being in the boss's good graces, getting dragged to business golf or nightly drinks, but that was all just to protect my pride. "You're cool, Matt." What? All of a sudden, Natalie, sitting next to me, watched me with a smile, chuckling in her typical way. It wasn't just her smile, but her bright laughter and subtle thoughtfulness that were so characteristic of her. "Matt, remember how you used to get lost in school all the time?" "Hey, don't bring that up. That was decades ago." "Haha, sorry, it's just nostalgic." Memories from 20 years ago flooded back, and I couldn't help my tearing up a little. After 2 hours, the reunion came to a close, and we headed to the after party at a bar. "Good job, everyone. You too." Natalie, aren't you coming to the after party? As classmates started to leave the venue, I noticed Natalie staying behind with her husband, Bob, at their family inn. When they finished cleaning up, I approached them. Hey, Matt, do you want to talk for a bit with me? I was a bit shaken, not expecting Natalie to ask me out, but once today's reunion and interview is over, I would not be returning to the island for a while. This might be the last chance to talk with Natalie. We sat down on the back porch of the inn, quietly looking out at the garden. Natalie seemed uncharacteristically hesitant, her face downturned. Back in school, she was always the one to break the ice with shy me. Tonight, it was my turn to lead the conversation with Natalie. What's up? This isn't like you, Natalie. Is that so? It's been 16 years since I last saw you. Maybe I'm just nervous. Natalie, you were never the type to be intimidated by anyone. Talk like you used to, no holding back. Yeah, you're right. Natalie lifted her face and turned to me before speaking. Today, honestly, I was really happy. You came to the reunion. Come on, don't exaggerate. No, I'm serious. Our family inn might be closing down soon. What? It was a bolt from the blue. As I looked at Natalie with wide eyes, I could see her eyes were beginning to tear up. The number of tourists has been declining over the years, and my parents are getting old. They're thinking of closing the inn. I love this job. I want to keep the inn going. What will you do if the inn closes, Natalie? I guess I'll live with my husband's family. I'll probably help out with the farm work. I see. Watching Natalie clench her hands on her knees in frustration, I could feel just how much she loved the inn. In that moment, a passionate fire ignited within me that had been smoldering in the depths of my heart. Don't give up, Natalie. You want to keep working, right? Yeah, but if guests don't come, we can't keep running the inn. Don't worry, I'll write an article about it. I had never really wanted to write an article on my own accord before. I'd just been going with the flow, covering whatever was popular or trending at the time, and visiting tourist spots out of calculation. But now it was different. I wanted to share the charm of my humble, packed small hometown charms only I knew about with someone else. Heck, that makes me happy. You're still you, Matt. You've always helped me out, even if you grumble about it. That's because you helped me first, Natalie. I'm grateful for that. Yeah, I'm glad you've been my childhood friend. It felt refreshing to be able to express feelings I couldn't before I left the island 16 years later. The next day, I asked my classmates and parents about the charms of the island and visited the natural wonders we were proud of. After returning to the city, I energetically started working on the production of a travel magazine. From selecting photographs to writing articles, for the first time in a long time, I did everything myself. There were days when it was physically difficult due to the constant overtime work, but several junior members of the team helped me with miscellaneous tasks and offered me food, which made me feel once again grateful for the team. Matt, could you come to the conference room for a sec? A week after publication, I was called by my boss again. This month's article was really good. The interviews felt authentic, and the features hook was excellent. Really. It seems inquiries to the place have increased. Well done, Matt. Thank you. Receiving words of praise for the first time in years, I hugged the travel magazine, my work of pride, to my chest. With the help of Natalie, Jake, my classmates, and my parents, I was able to write the article. I was able to savor the beauty of my hometown and the joy of my work anew. It was that rural island that changed me. And now, I want to visit Natalie's inn again, not as a journalist, but as a dear friend.